find me where the wild things are.
Welcome back, wild ones. It's been a while since I've made a video. I've been super busy with my baby's birthday and possibly doing a move soon, so I've been a little behind on making videos. So today I wanted to go over something different. Lately, most of what I've done have been some gatherings and party food and recipes, but for a change I wanted to go back over some things I haven't made a video on in a while. If you look back down in the video history, you'll see a lot about zero waste and minimalism, and it's been a while since I've updated on that. So today I wanted to talk about 10 things that I have learned since becoming minimalist. 10 do's and don'ts, if you will. I found minimalism almost 7 years ago, at least 6 years ago now. And if you are interested in the story of how I went from pretty much almost a hoarder to a minimalist, I will link my original blog post from a couple years ago down in the description box below if you want to read that. And also, if you check out that blog, there is some follow-up posts to that, things like what to do after minimalism, after you've made that initial large purge of your items, and how to find joy in day-to-day things. So to start off with, I wanted to talk about 10 do's and don'ts for minimalism that I have learned along the way, most of the time the hard way. I have a handy dandy list here to keep my thoughts in check. Number 1 is don't try to force your housemates and loved ones into minimalism as well, just because you are. So what I mean by this is, say you are married or you're living with your parents, whatever the situation may be, even your children, just because you have taken this journey into minimalism, it isn't right or helpful for you to try and force that onto others. And in some ways, I totally understand wanting to do this because I've been there myself. By that I mean, when I finished my initial purge and I had so very few things, and yet the house was still such a mess when I looked around, there was so much clutter, it drove me mad. Because in my mind, I was thinking, what was the point of doing all of this then if there's still going to be so much clutter? So I totally understand that mindset. It's totally valid and fair. But what isn't fair is trying to force your choices onto someone else. Nobody was ever won over into an argument by force. So the best thing that you can do, truly, when it comes to, say, a spouse or partner that isn't also decluttering with you, is to just let yourself be the example of, you have this space and these are your things, and all the things that you have time for now and the things that you get to enjoy. You have time to do crafts, and you have time to go kayaking, and you have time to see your friends. You don't have to spend so much time looking after your things and dusting them and keeping up on them. And say you minimized your clothes, you don't have to do quite so much folding and laundry and sorting. And they will see that contentedness and that ease of living that comes with minimalism just by you being that example for them. They still may not find that interesting for their own lives, and that is okay. That is their right. It doesn't serve you to force it on anyone else. At one point, you weren't also a minimalist, so you had to come to this on your own, just like everybody else does. So give everyone around you grace, or you will make everyone miserable, and trying to force it on someone else really sucks the joy out of the process for you. Number 2, do always consistently minimize. So what I mean by that is that just because you finish an initial large purge does not mean you're done. Things have a way of sneaking in and creeping up on you, from Christmas stocking stuffers or, little, hey, I was thinking of you and saw this at the thrift store, or somebody hands you an extra book or something. Things creep up on you, and it may be other people's, little things, like maybe somebody stashes junk mail here or there. Whatever it may be, just because you have finished your initial purge does not mean that it's ever really over. I mean, 6-7 years for me now, I'm consistently doing sometimes monthly and quarterly declutters. So it's good to have a system. You know, try and decide for yourself, are you going to do a weekly declutter? Are you going to do a quarterly? Maybe, you know, maybe just not wait until you see that it gets really bad, because I've done that. I thought, where did all this stuff come from? And it would have been better if I had just had a system in place like I do now of, you know, I do
Mama.
Hi.
You.
Thank you. That's nice.
Ne.
I don't know what you see up there. Can you color me another one?
Tap.
Okay, I lost my train of thought, but what I think I was saying was that it's good to do something like I do about 3 times a year, plus when I see, you know, an extra area that needs doing. So it's good to have a system, and I really recommend, you know, the 1 in, 1 out rule as much as you can. That if you are really loving a certain number of tops that you have, it's good to know then if you find something you really like, you have to be willing to let go of another one that's in your pile. And that really helps keep down on things. I will say though that it hasn't been good to be so very strict on that, because then if you find joy in 11 tops instead of 10, you don't want to deprive yourself of that, of course. You know, you might really love that extra top no less than you love a different one. As long as you love it, that's what matters. As long as it brings you joy and it, you know, it makes you feel good in it. And that really is the important thing about what we wear, for example. So, you know, give yourself some grace and some room to breathe there, but I do think as much as you can, find a 1 in, 1 out rule. You know, you don't want to bring in 18 pair of shoes when you had 10. Keep an eye on what's building up for you. Okay, number 3 is to do always reevaluate items and spaces. Give yourself some grace here. Perhaps some items that you had initially that were important to you in a certain period in your life have become less important. Maybe certain spaces felt really, really nice when they were more bare, but you have changed slightly in your tastes, in your interests, and you would really like to add some different furniture to a room, or maybe a vase. I know that's a thing, right? But my point is that it is important to give yourself room to change and adjust, especially when it comes to your expectations. To not be so stringent on, but this is what this room looked like before when I minimized. And if it changes, maybe that means I'm losing my grip on minimalism. You're still you. You're a person, and our emotions and personalities and tastes are very fluid. And I think that it is okay to give yourself room to breathe when it comes to adjusting some of our expectations for our living spaces and for the items we want around us. Number 4, do look up new videos and articles for each type of purge that you're planning to do and or life change. So, I mean, even so far into minimalism, I still look up some of the most basic articles that I read when I initially found it. That is okay. I think it is good to always find new YouTube channels. For example, when I know I'm about to go in on an area, I like to find a YouTube video of someone posting their decluttering of that area just for motivation, because sometimes I have a hard time motivating myself to do something I don't want to do. But but it is good to know that those resources are there for you. For example, when I first started in towards the end of my initial purging, I found myself really struggling with the sentimental items. That was the sentimental items and the books. Those were my 2 areas that were absolutely most difficult for me. I Google searched some articles on that, on, you know, minimizing sentimental items, or you know, minimalism for the book lover or whatever. And when you look it up, it gives you some new ideas, some ways to work around the parts that are a struggle for you. I found lots of good tips on what to do for sentimental items that literally a certain tip I found, for example, taking a picture of an item that you're afraid of losing that memory and knowing that you can always look back on that picture, that was instrumental for me in moving past my issue with sentimental items. Books for me, I think it really helped to know they weren't getting thrown away, that especially if donating them to a library, you can get them back out anytime you wanted. Donating them to friends was a lot easier for me than, you know, throwing them out into the book ether. But on top of that, I had to look at my reasoning for why I was holding on to so many books. Articles and YouTube videos are invaluable not only for motivation, but also new ideas into how to help you work past a difficult area. Number 5, don't lose sight of the journey. This one was really important for me because along the way, I found myself feeling a bit listless. For example, at the beginning, I was so revved up for minimizing all my things, especially my very first initial purge where I got rid of so much. If I can find the picture, I'll put it right here. When I was done, this was everything that I had left. This was all of my clothing, everything that I owned except for furniture and like plates, stuff like that. This was initially after a divorce, and I realized in moving to so many places, especially the job I had at the time, you know, I was a property manager, and I had to always be moving to different properties, different apartments, and it just became ridiculous to cart all these things around with me. And especially after the divorce, I didn't really want to set those same things back up in a new place that reminded me of a painful situation before. I became so invigorated with doing it, and I got rid of everything. I mean, I owned enough for probably almost 2 families worth of people, at least a whole family all on my own, just of my personal things. It was crazy. And you know, I came to love it so much, and I was so passionate about it that when I was down to just this, it was like, what else is there to do now? Like, what? Everything's gone. So, you know, maybe I should get rid of the violin. Maybe I should, you know, and you begin to encroach into the territory of getting rid of things that you actually do love just for the sake of being able to continue decluttering. Or maybe you'll move on to finding someone else to declutter their things for them, just because it feels so good to get there, to have this weight lifted off of you. But it's not the answer. Enjoy the journey of doing it, of all the little nuances that you learn along the way of, oh, that's why I was keeping so many books. That's so interesting to have learned about myself. You know, to really relish in the process instead of only looking at the end goal is really important, because eventually you will get to that end goal and you will feel listless like I did originally. And I did this a few times along the way, because even after, you know, I got remarried and I then had household things, and I have consistently kept up on those items and tried to, you know, keep those purged and minimized, I have found that occasionally I get lost in the process again. So it is important to focus on the journey of it and learning things about yourself along the way, and finding joy in actually you know, having gratitude for those items and what they did for you while you had them, and how those items served you at the time. So go slowly and go intentionally. Number 6, don't define yourself by minimalism, define yourself by joy. So when you're done, you'll be thinking, I'm a minimalist. I'm even an extreme minimalist. I sleep on the floor, whatever your thing is. It's important to not define yourself by this, because things come in, things end up filtering in, or you may end up getting married or moving in with someone that isn't a minimalist, and you're going to wonder, but I'm not, I mean, my things are minimal, but I am not living a minimalist lifestyle of simplicity. So who am I? Don't define yourself by this. Define yourself by the joy that you receive by then being able to have so much free time for things that you can do now that you couldn't do before, or the joy that the things you do have, what those bring you. It is important to remember the reason why you did this in the first place. You did it for peace, for contentment, for joy, and just know that all of that is still there, and the label that we put on ourselves can sometimes be a detriment. Number 7, do focus on pleasures after the purge. So once we get so wrapped in minimizing our things and focusing so hard on this end goal, we forget why we did it, which is part of number 6. So what I mean by number 7 is make a list for yourself of when you have minimal amounts of things, when you don't have to spend so much time cleaning and caring for those things, what is it that you're looking to do with your life? I'm sure you're looking for some contentment in simplicity, and if you're like me, you were looking to have more focus on the opportunities and experiences of life. There were things I wanted to do. I made a bucket list, and you can find that blog link below as well of how I went about my bucket list after I minimized. All these new things I then realized I had an interest in that I don't know if I didn't know it before, or I just didn't take the time to know it. I mean, it is hard to find peace in your mind and in your soul when you are just surrounded by clutter. It causes anxiety and stress and unhappiness. Are things, like the minimalists say, do you own your things or do your things own you? And it was so true for me. They really did. So focus on the pleasures of the things for after the purge. Do you want to go kayaking? Do you want to join a baseball team? Do you want to join a book club? Do you want to start a collection? Which is controversial, I know, but if it makes you happy, this is the point. You will have room for that rock collection or whatever after. Collections aren't a good idea in general, but you get my point. Number 8, don't place your value on others' items, meaning you shouldn't put your opinion of the value someone else's item has for them. So, confession time, when I had kind of just finished, just before I would be moving in with my new husband, he had, it may have been after actually, but he had so many retro games, and at the time I was just so gung-ho about this image I had in my mind about what the minimalist lifestyle would mean for me that I so wanted him to have decluttered as well. Note point number 1. And I thought that the games that he never pulled out, that he never played with, were just kind of silly being around. He had like 3 different Nintendos and all these games, and to me it was ridiculous to have so many of the same thing, but it was his passion. And eventually, I don't know if I pressured him or he just kind of, I don't know, but either way, he ended up getting rid of his original Nintendo and the games from when he was a young boy. And over time, I have learned that that is a big regret he's had. He doesn't hesitate to say he has way too much stuff still. He doesn't need all the cords he has and all the different thingamabobs men have, but he does regret getting rid of his Nintendo. And, maybe it is or isn't my fault, I don't know, but I feel guilty about it because I know that it was my idea, it was my suggestion, and I have a way of maybe pressuring without realizing that that's what I did. He regrets it, and he can't get back this Nintendo from his childhood and the games that he remembers playing. And maybe he didn't pull it out as much as I thought he should pull it out if it's something that you enjoy. But you know what? It's this big. And if it brings him happiness, just knowing that that's there for him anytime, it was not my business to put any value on that for him. It was his item, not mine, and that wasn't fair of me. There are things that I thought, even of my own, were silly to keep around. Okay, I've had this forever, since I was 7. I shouldn't keep this. And I got rid of it. And literally there has been, for sure, one thing that I sometimes regret but still wouldn't change. And technically two things that was a collection of books that I've had since I was a child that literally I just was my life. I loved them. And I sometimes regret those because those were the original books from my childhood that I read. They had the same dog ears and the same torn pages, and they were mine, and they felt like childhood to me. So sometimes I regret that. So that feeling, if you can correlate that to something in your life personally, then know not to put that on someone else, because it isn't our business what someone else wants to keep or treasure. That said, I want to make a caveat that really I regret nothing else. I have never thought, oh darn, I really needed that, or oh, I really regret giving that up, except maybe one thing that was very personal to me that, like I said, I wouldn't take back. I sometimes regret it just in my heart of hearts, but I had a good reason for doing it, and I wouldn't change that. And of course the books that logically I know I can rent anytime I want from the library. But my point is that there is something about knowing this was something that had sentimental value that cannot be replaced, like my husband's Nintendo. Number 9, do consistently find new ways to help yourself minimize. Once you've finally minimized your things, you will realize that there's still life happening around you. There are still papers coming in and paperwork and things like that. And there are tools out there and resources that can help you be a better minimalist. For example, there are electronics that literally you can put a piece of paper in and it scans them onto a hard drive. And you don't have to keep that physical paper, save for a few things, of course, like your birth certificate or whatever. For certain things that you realize there's a bit of extra, whether it's paperwork or it is maybe kitchen appliances, Google those things and see is there a more compact appliance that I can trade these 4 things that this one thing will do the same, like an Instapot or whatever, or like this document scanner. Same thing for digital photos. You might find an external hard drive can save so many more things than a million USB flash drives. So just something to consider. There's always something that can help you more. Lastly, number 10, don't confuse minimizing for organization. Organization leaves one feeling, oh, that feels so much better in here compared to where it was. Say you have, your bathroom cabinet, things were just everywhere and you couldn't find cough drops if your life depended on it, but you know they're there. Or for me, it was like lids for pots and pans. Organizing those things make it look a lot better, but do not confuse that for actually decluttering, because there's a huge difference. We can basically put, what is the phrase, like bathing a swine or earring for a pig. What am I thinking of? Anyway, I don't even know what phrase I'm thinking of. I'm thinking about an earring in a swine's ear or something. But anyway, my point is that you will still have the same number of items if you only organize them. They'll look better, they'll be more aesthetically pleasing, but when it comes down to the same amount of things to care for or pack up when you have to move, those things will still be there. What you need to do is declutter as much as possible and then keep those things organized, and it will be much easier with less things. So, I'm not actually very organized, I don't think, in my home as far as my spice cabinet. I have a rack and and then I have some other ones up top. So I may not be able to speak very well on this, but I do know that organization is still just better looking chaos. It's still better to just have less things to begin with. And then at a certain point, those things don't even need to be organized because you open a cabinet and there's your 3 pot lids. You know what I mean? So I hope that part makes sense, but it's just something to consider, that the things going out have to be more than the things coming in for you to ever make any headway and find yourself in a peaceful space. If you like this kind of video, please comment below and give it a thumbs up. That way I know to do more minimalism series for you. And check out the minimalist playlist on my channel where I have put in the other videos I've done on the subject. And again, in the description box below, I have linked some of my blog articles on when I initially started minimalism. So I hope this has helped and has been somewhat interesting if you've been working on it for a while now, or even if you're new to it. And stay tuned. I will maybe do a declutter and packing video for our upcoming move. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Find me where the wild things are.